Hello, and welcome to this speed build video. This is actually part 2, and this is a collab that I'm doing with Antisocial Bunny. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'll leave a card that you can click on to go to her video and start out there so you see the first part of this. This is a sort of collaboration project that we came up with where the first person is going to build the house and the second person is going to furnish it. And it's also involving a prompt. So if you've seen the first video, I'm sure you've already heard Bunny's prompt and seen the house being built. I haven't seen it yet, so this is going to be my first look at it before I start to furnish it. So what I'm going to do is take it out of the lot bin and plop it down and try not to look at it. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, I'm trying to be really quick here to put it down. There it is. So yeah, not looking at it anymore. And I'm going to go into the lot view and start furnishing it. So I have arrived at the lot and quickly turned away from the house. So I haven't seen it yet. But yeah, so let's take a first look at it. Oh, there it is. How cool. Okay, so I see it's very split up. Of course, that's according to the prompt. Some really interesting things going on with the roof. Oh, how cool. Okay, so there's like a pool area here. Nice. Okay, let's go into the house and check. Cool. Lots of diagonal wall work here. It's always interesting to furnish. Oh, wow. So this is the entrance. It's even fenced off. Nice. All right. Oh, and there's actually also like a basement kind of thing going on here. Huh. Very interesting. All right. This is going to be so fun. So I'm going to have a more look around, think about it for a bit, and yeah, start furnishing it. So it took me a moment to sort of wrap my head around this house, but once I had, I noticed a few things here that I didn't at the first glance. I noticed the different fencing cutting off the rooms, and also the huge sort of chimney in the middle of the house. There's a broken part of the fencing behind the pool and also missing tiles in the roof. So there are some little bits and pieces here that tells a story, or well, at least it gives some hints as to what might have happened in this house. And I decided to use that in combination with the actual prompt to sort of build a story in my head for what was going on with the sisters living in this house. And I had to sort of structure the rebuild of this house in different sections, you could say, because I sort of had to break down the story into 3 parts and yeah, figure out at first what the sisters' life normally looked like what led up to what was gonna happen during the party, or what had happened recently, I should say. And I got the vibe at once, looking at the house. I got the vibe of sort of Asian-inspired, sort of Japanese style things. I think it might have been the roofing that did it for me, or maybe the different shapes, that everything is so symmetrical. But I decided to put in a lot of these huge windows with like thin screens. Yeah, that sort of Japanese style kind of thing. And that laid the foundation of the entire style of the house leading up to it. It wasn't what I had been expecting because I knew that it was going to be holiday theme, and yeah, Japanese style isn't really the first thing I think of for that, but yeah, that's where I was going with it. And I even decided to pick out a Japanese shingle roof that I have, this sort of brown one, and that sort of brought the style together, making the house look very different, but still with these different shapes, I think. And yeah, I figured that the sisters living in this house from the start, they would have to have it, structured up in a certain way, so that some parts of the house were common areas that they shared, and then they would have one sort of section of the house to themselves. So this entrance hall that I'm working on right now was gonna be a common space, as well as the upstairs, and then of course also the patio out back. And then everything else is not entirely mirrored, but almost. It's they look very, very the same. And that was gonna be the more private sections of the house, that is. And since the sisters liked to do everything the same, everything together, I wanted to make the two sides of the house like literal mirror pieces of each other. At least they used to be before whatever happened. Here I was having trouble with this driveway for some reason. I think it had to do with me downloading the lot, and it was sitting outside of the lot border. So I'm gonna reload the lot later, and then that made it disappear, so that I could actually put down a real one. But the one that sits there now, I couldn't delete it. So that's what happened. But yeah, it was gonna be mirror images, you could say, of each other's apartments. But then in the middle, it was gonna have to be the parts that they shared, and I had to decide also what kind of rooms that was gonna be. And I decided that, they probably don't have one kitchen each, so they should share a kitchen, and they probably have, some sort of party area, I would say. They seemed like people who would invite people over and enjoy having different kinds of, influential people over, probably for their projects and such, and having a large entrance hall with maybe art pieces and something very impressive as soon as you enter the house. Felt like something that they would want to share. So mapping that out was a challenge, definitely, because of all of the diagonal walls, and deciding where to put the kitchen especially was my biggest challenge in this. And here you could see that I reloaded a lot, and that allowed me to actually put down the driveway properly. So that was sort of the first part of this process, try to figure out how were the sisters living together in this house, how had they split it up, and what did they share together. What was sort of normal for the two of them, you could say. And when I had done that was when I could start to think about, okay, but what actually happened that made them not want to hang out with each other anymore? What split them apart? And I started to build up these sort of theories in my head. And I utilized the little hints and clues that Bunny had left in the house when she built it. And I'm gonna tell you the story later on, so I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but that was sort of when I had come to that point. Then I could start to think about the recent events and how that had actually changed the house, the way that it used to look and how it looks now. And here, this is my solution to the kitchen problem. It ended up becoming a diagonal one. I have absolutely no idea if this is functional or not. I had to turn the snapping off completely and freehand it. It's possible that it's still functional. It's possible that you could put it on this Agnieszka's rotatable OMSBs and make it work. That usually does work, actually. But yeah, I'm actually interested to try this out at some point to, you know, if a completely diagonal house would work. I have tried like double beds before, and even though the animations is wonky, it actually does work. So you'd be surprised, actually. But yeah, so that's what I did, and yeah, I did enjoy these little like outcroppings or sticking out parts, as I normally say, in this room, because it allowed me to sort of create different rooms inside of the big one. And the huge chimney in the middle also framed off the spaces, so it felt more divided. I think that this room would have felt very different if that wasn't there, if it was just a completely open space. It probably would have been a lot harder to furnish, honestly, because it would have been so much space, so much open area with nothing cutting it off. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed that. This was a compromise that I had to make, and I'm not completely pleased with it because I know that that table isn't functional. But I couldn't figure out a way to put in a long table anywhere else and make it make sense. That was actually one of the things that I had been having in my head ever since reading Bunny's prompt a few weeks prior to actually sitting down and furnishing this. I had been thinking about, you know, what would the party actually be like for the guests? I had sort of envisioned this, you know, long table in the middle of a house, and it was divided in the middle, and the guests had to choose which side to sit on, or something like that, sort of like a Mad Hatter and Hare's tea table from Alice in Wonderland, that kind of feeling. I couldn't manage to make that work really in this house, but I did still want to have sort of the long table feeling, and that's what I added in up here. And this is, of course, the way that it would normally have looked. I think that the sisters, when they actually live in this space together, that they have one side of the long table each. You know, the chairs with the pelts lying on them. I think that those are the sisters' chairs. And then the white and black ones are strictly for guests. So that's what I imagine that they do with this room normally. And I put in a bar, of course. So that also became another sort of room within the room, you could say. So we have a kitchen area, a dining table, and then a bar, besides the staircase, of course. And yeah, after that I could move on to the bedrooms. And this was also interesting because I brought in some Asian influences here, and this became very, you know, I would say Japanese style, I suppose, not being too strict with it. But I also put in some, you know, Christmassy vibes with decorations here and there in the house. It's going to be a lot more later with the lights and such, but yeah, started out with these pillows. I thought it was a nice sort of wink to the holiday season that I wanted to add in here. And I tried to make it very cozy as well, because the risk that I often run when I build for scientists, I would say especially, is that I make it too clinical. And it's nice to, you know, bring in these soft and natural textures into a house like that. a house that's very, structured, very symmetrical, cold surfaces, iron fencing, huge windows. You probably also want some wood in there, some nice fabric. Curtains is very important. Those kinds of things. That really adds to the coziness of the build, even if it's very sterile, I suppose you could say. I've been wanting to use these sort of decorative wooden things for a very long time. I haven't had the perfect build to put them in, but this sort of just made sense. It's made a sort of makeshift, what is the word in English? A bed with a canopy bed. Is that the word? A canopy bed? Yeah. But in wood instead of fabric, of course. That I really liked. So yeah, it matched well with those. What do you call them? Japanese fencing that I put inside of the house as well. I switched out the fencing a bit, but still tried to keep the same vibe that was from the start. Bunny and I agreed that we could change out things such as windows and doors, but it still had to be in the same place. So I never moved anything. I only switched it out for custom content. Of course, what would I do without my custom content? So yeah, this is gonna be their offices. And of course, the sisters were working together as well. So they're not just twins, they're also colleagues. So I'm assuming that most of the things that they work on, their projects and such, actually aren't in their home. So the home offices would be more like hobby things, I suppose. I could definitely see the two of them being the sort of people who are married to their jobs, of course. But yeah, not too much, not too intense. So there's a lot of, decorations and plants and things. Not just, papers and books, that kind of thing. And of course, they needed to have nice places to stargaze as well, I thought. With these huge windows, they could stargaze all year round from here in a pretty good position. The only thing that would have made it better, I suppose, would have been to have sort of glass roofs as well. Maybe. That would be like the scientist's dream, right? Yeah. But I put in a lot of decoration in selective parts of the house. Because if I would have gone ham and decorated everything in perfect detail, it would have taken me 3 years to decorate this house. But I wanted to clutter up the offices, definitely, and try to, make it feel a bit like, the homes that you would see in a sort of furnishing magazine. Like, they probably have help around the house, I'm assuming. Someone coming around, cleaning for them, taking care of things. I'm assuming that the sisters earn a lot of money after all, and they are working almost constantly. I'm assuming if they're not working, they're probably working on their fun little projects as well. So yeah, I don't think that they would be very homely people. And they probably haven't designed how things should look either. They're probably sort of employed an architect or something to actually build and furnish this, coming with outlandish requests and things. Yeah, that's probably it. So yeah, I wanted to make it look like pretty impersonal in a way. Something that you would see in a magazine, as I said. And of course, identical on both sides of the house. So just little personal knickknacks here and there. But it's also sort of the added thing that they are also wanting to be identical. They are proud to be identical in every single way. So I was thinking that they probably have had this experiment going on since they were teenagers or even children, maybe, that they want to see how similar they can be and try to go out of their way to do everything the same, like in every single detail that they can. Might be their longest running project to date. That's what I was thinking. So furnishing the bathroom, and it's pretty slim as well, but surprisingly I could fit in even the bathtub, a shower, and everything else in there as well. Yeah, it is a bit of a squeeze. It wouldn't be possible without the quarter tie placement sheet, I think, and still have the bathtub and toilet and everything be functional. So again, I went with very sort of earthy tones in this living room space as well. And I decided to screen off the staircase because it made it feel not very homey. I thought to have it there in the middle of the room, so I sort of wanted to have the same effect that the chimney has in the kitchen, that it's screening off the room and creating two different spaces, so that the staircase is actually almost in a room of itself. And then the actual living room space with the comfortable sofas sits on its own. And of course the carpet helps as well to sort of frame in the room. And I was delighted to see that I had this sort of, it looks like a jean structure floor lamp that I had apparently, that I was really happy to find. So I thought that lamp really suited the both of them perfectly. And again, this is an example of the sort of knickknacks I put in here and there. Nothing too outlandish, nothing put on OMSPs this time. I think I used surprisingly few OMSPs actually in this house. Oh well, you're gonna see a lot more of those coming up. Never mind. Yeah, I'm gonna decorate for the party later. This is just the sort of what things normally look like part of the video. So yeah, I take everything back. But so far, at least, there hasn't been very much OMSP work. And I wanted to put in a lot of artwork in this house as well, because I thought that that's something that they would spend their money on, I suppose. If they earn a lot of money, I think that they would want the house to look very chic, modern, and somewhere where it's easy to entertain guests. And here you might start to catch the first little hints of the disruption between the sisters. You notice that the red car is inside of the garage and the black car is outside. And here I deleted the driveway as well. And the reason for that is, of course, that since the house is split in two, the two sisters have parts of the house to themselves. And as it happens, the right side of the house with the red car and the red door, is it right? Driveway door, actually has the staircase up to the kitchen. So the left side of the house doesn't have a kitchen, really. So I'm gonna have to utilize what space I do have, and it turns out that the garage was the best space to put in a makeshift kitchen for the second sister. So yeah, that's one of the things that I had to figure out when I tried to split up the house. And figure out the story as well, what had happened and everything. yeah, it was a very, very fun and interesting challenge, this, to think in different layers like that. And here is the gardening part as well. And yeah, I tried to make it pretty similar to how I decorated the inside of the house as well. Sort of sparse, carefully picked out bits and pieces of expensive trees and plants. And yeah, sort of putting them down in very structured looking ways. But I think that's enough about the build itself. I think that most of the things you see on screen is going to be pretty self-explanatory. And I'm very eager to let you know what I came up with for the story for the sisters. So without further ado, I'm going to move this along to the actual continuation of the story. Helga and Olga had been inseparable since birth. That everyone knew. What they didn't know was that it had been quite literally so before birth and shortly after. As a matter of fact, they weren't only identical twins, but Siamese twins whose joint heads had had to be cut apart immediately postpartum. It was no wonder then that their brains, which had grown into existence as one, kept them alike all throughout their youth. Well, almost. Although the sisters both agreed quite logically that they were perfectly happy alone and that intimate relationships were nothing but useless distractions, they were but human. From time to time, they happened upon people who pulled at their heartstrings. Nothing too intimate, it could all be easily ignored. At least, that's what they told each other as they shut themselves in and buried themselves in work. That was until Helga met Arnold. Their romance was intense, quick-burning and completely secret. Helga savored every stolen moment because she knew it was a love that couldn't last. After all, if Helga had Arnold, then who did Olga have? So she ended it, quickly and quietly, and went back to her old life as if nothing had happened. But not long after, everything changed. It was a night just like any other. The sisters had had identical dinners on each side of their identically set table halves. They had both retired to their identical sides of the lavish house, taken bubble baths that lasted 20 minutes on the dot, and retired to their upstairs offices to stargaze for precisely an hour before bedtime. Then, a blinding light struck the roof on Olga's side of the house, cutting straight through the shingles and ripping her out and up into the night sky. Once she returned, bruised and weary, she wasn't the same. Well, she was still herself, Olga. And yet, she was different. See, a dramatic experience now separated the sisters, an issue that they at first set out to resolve. If only Helga would be abducted as well, it would all be put to rights. Trouble was, no matter how many nights they spent with Helga at Olga's telescope, the aliens never returned. A few weeks later, a second issue surfaced. Olga was pregnant. Helga asked her at once to bring it to an early end, abort mission, but Olga refused. See, both sisters were fascinated by the extraterrestrial, always had been, and bringing an alien baby into the world was something Olga hadn't ever dared to dream of. Helga, for her part, was, of course, enraged by this news. Filled with jealousy and regret, she immediately broke all contact with Olga and retired to her side of the house. It didn't take long before the two of them split the house in two. Olga quickly took control of the kitchen, arguing that since she was eating for two, she couldn't be faulted for that. Helga retaliated by claiming the pool area, arguing that Olga wouldn't be getting much exercise in the coming months, so she wouldn't have any need of it. Needless to say, things were painfully tense, both at home and at work. By the time their annual joint holiday party rolled around, things had become right out nasty. Their parties always consisted of two main events: a beautiful 5-course dinner and a jolly robot light show out by the pool. It was no wonder then that Olga decided to cook the best dinner yet, that Helga resolved to perform the best light show their guests had ever seen, or that they both solemnly swore to sabotage each other. First, the pool ladder mysteriously vanished. Following that, Helga resolutely put up a fence, cutting the entrance hall in two and screening off the doors leading out to the patio. Next, Olga's garage door was painted a loud fire engine red, while Helga's Christmas tree was set ablaze so that once the flames were doused, only a charred black husk was left behind. It all came to a head when Olga had to flee, huffing and puffing, from the piping hot kitchen. Down in the basement, she found the heater cranked up to max, filled to the brim with their experimental rocket fuel, and became so incensed that she sledgehammered down an iron fence to prevent her sister from entering the room altogether. Then came the night of the party, and at first things appeared to be going according to plan. The guests arrived and mingled in the entrance hall, walking from one area to the next, while the sisters stayed out of each other's way. Throughout the night, guests walked back and forth between the upstairs kitchen and the downstairs garage, doing their best to attend both parties at once. The sisters, of course, did everything in their power to make the guests stay on their side of the house for longer and longer periods of time. During the first hours of the party, Olga was highly successful in luring the guests to her side with her cozy decor, delicious food, and comforting beverages. However, once it became time for the annual Jolly Robot Light Show, every single guest left for the pool area. Completely alone, Olga stood by the window, looking down at the fruits of her sister's labor. It was a difficult thing to watch. Olga and Helga had worked that light show into perfection throughout the years, and it had always been something the both of them looked forward to. Watching Helga perform the show alone, Olga was filled with regret, and she wondered suddenly to herself why they had been fighting in the first place. At that moment, one of the grand fireworks went off at an odd angle, and things escalated into chaos. The guests ran back and forth in blind panic as the robots started shooting sparks in their direction, and while Helga did everything in her power to regain control, it was no use. She had simply bitten off more than she could chew in an effort to outshine her sister, and now she was paying for it. Olga ran downstairs as fast as she could, and only arrived in time to see the large fire dragon, meant for the grand finale, descend from the roof and crash straight into the fencing behind the pool, splitting it in two. The sisters' eyes met, and at once it was as if something once dislodged snapped back into place, and they started working. Helga straightened out the disordered fireworks, while Olga quickly recalibrated the robots, and the show was back on track. Thanks to their joint efforts, they managed to salvage the situation and make it seem as if the temporary chaos had been planned all along. Once it was done, and the well-fed and entertained guests finally left, Helga and Olga trudged in silence up to the kitchen and sat down side by side at the bar. They both apologized, and Helga finally told Olga about Arnold and what she had sacrificed in silence. Once it was all out in the open, and the sisters finally understood each other again, they came to an agreement. Olga would keep her baby. Helga would try to patch things up with Arnold, and the both of them would never, ever host separate holiday parties again. And that is the end of Olga's and Helga's story, as far as we know it at least. And this is what the house ended up turning out like. All decorative for the party and everything. And this is also the end of this collab video. But guess what? It's not the end of the entire project, because I also built the house. And Bunny is also gonna furnish it. So that's something that's coming up really soon. And I haven't seen it either, what it turned out like. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that you are as well. And I hope that you enjoyed this kind of video. I'm really, really grateful to you, Bunny, for wanting to do this little project with me. It's been really, really fun and exciting. And yeah, as I said, I can't wait to see the next part of this. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.